Welcome back to the Arch Advocate Show. Thank you for joining me today. This is the episode where I tell you why there is no episode of the Arch Advocate podcast today. It is the episode that I tell you why there's no episode today. Listen, baby Reiland came screaming into the world, and I've got the whole thing on video. Healthy baby boy, and I could not be happier right now. However, my thing is, listen, I may have told you guys this before. I have a couple of different superpowers. One of them is my teeth. People look at my teeth and be like, why are your teeth so crooked? It's like, well, because I don't screw with them, because I've never had a cavity. I'm 45 years old, never had a cavity. I'm not screwing with my teeth. And the other superpower is this, my sleep. Man, I sleep solid. Like, I hear about people who have like horrible sleep lives. You know what I mean? Like they gotta buy those $10,000 mattresses, you know, like that whole thing. Like I don't struggle with that. I sleep like a dude. I sleep like a rock, and if anything interrupts my sleep, it just ruins me. So the last 3 days it's been pretty brutal. Right? I've not gotten very much sleep, and I am sick. And I already tried to record a podcast. I did about 20 minutes, and man, my voice was just crackling so bad that I had to stop. I can't give you a podcast today. I just don't have it in me. All right, it's about 8 o'clock in the morning where I'm at, and at the time that I'm recording this, and I have to go back to bed, you guys. I have to be fresh. I gotta wake up in a little bit. And I gotta take Caleb out. Poor Caleb. He's been just a little champion, but his sleep got screwed up too. So he's a little bit moody. So I gotta take him. There's an indoor park that I can take him to today, where hopefully it'll be heated. It's very cold where I'm at, and need to let him get some exercise and wear himself out. So I have to be sharp for that. But I didn't want to just not give you guys a show today. I wanted to do one yesterday, but it just wasn't going to happen. There's too much stuff. My wife came home from the hospital and whatever. Oh, by the way, I was this close to recording what a socialist hospital looks like where I'm at. But where I'm at, it's all socialism, right? So having Reiland born, it was free, certainly was, but that, it's like that phrase we have in America, and this is a very American saying, is you get what you pay for. And I wanted to record, these hospitals, there's like holes in the walls, and there's stuff just falling apart, there's just filth everywhere, and it's a hospital, so that filth is most likely other people's blood and urine and feces and all kinds of stuff. It was nasty, and I wanted to film that, but I was just like, you know what, I just the doctors wanted to keep my wife another day, and my wife was just like, I don't really need to be here, I just want to go home. So we brought her home, and anyways, that's why you guys didn't get a show yesterday. You're not getting a show today either, because I'm running a fever, my voice is cracking, whatever. But I've got a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of things that I want to share right now about being in the image of God, right? Like, this is like really what's truly on my heart, and has been. Obviously, when you have a baby, like it's transformative for anybody. Even to the smallest degree, it's transformative. It makes you think different things, and I wanted to plead to the audience, like, think about that. Think about what it means to be made in the image of God, because you are made in the image of God. There's a lot of Christians, I've heard them say it. I'm not just making this up. And by the way, again, I don't know what the percentages are. It could be most. Could be very few, it could be all, I don't know, but a lot of Christians, when they think of the image of God, they literally think of like a bilateral, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, a torso, 10 fingers, 10 toes, like that. 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 That cannot be what it means. When Moses wrote to us and said, let us make man in our image, like, what does that mean? What does that even mean? Like, who was God talking to? Let us make in our image? Like, what does that mean? Right? And I don't think that you're supposed to meet the answer to that question with some sort of absolute. I think it's one of the almost, many things, almost everything in the Bible. It's one of those things where it's like, no, you're just meant to meditate on that for the rest of your life. All right? You guys can get back to me with your absolutes when you're breathing your last breath, and then tell me what you think right before you move on and go be with the Father. Until then, let's just meditate on it and think, like, what does this mean to be made in the image of God? And is it possible that you are a representation, a unique representation of God in such a way that nobody else could do it? Nobody else is ever going to display the face of God, the nature of God, right? The power of God, quite like you. Can we look at other individuals, other remarkable individuals like Isaac Newton, Blaise Pascal, Nikolai Tesla, you know what I mean? Like Michelangelo, Slash from Guns N' Roses, you know what I mean? Like, can we look at other people and say, well, that person was clearly sent from heaven to do whatever that specific thing was, and to push humanity a little bit further down the road, right? To grease the wheels, of progress as mankind has been progressing this whole time. You know what I mean? What is it that you're here to do? Obviously, I've been thinking about that because it's like, here's little baby Reiland. Now I have 2 sons, and it's on me to shape them, to teach them, in such a way that they find their own prayer life and they find their own work ethic. Like, my job is to make sure that they have a work ethic and that it's solid and that it's good, but it has to be uniquely theirs. The motivation has to be theirs. They have to own it, right? Your prayer life, right? If you grew up in Christian circles, like, there's a very, the tendency is to turn prayer into some very formulaic, repetitive, like, oh God, thank you for this dinner, our Father who art in heaven, which, I'm not knocking those things. I'm just saying it's like, there's more, and it has to be yours. It has to be the way that you communicate with your Father. It has to be uniquely yours. It can't be mine, right? I was sitting in my bed this morning. I took a shower and I shaved and I went into the bedroom and I started praying over my family. And my wife and my sons were all in the bed. And I have a string of Christmas lights up in my bedroom, and so the light in the room was dark and blue, blue and green Christmas lights. And I just sat there and I just started thinking, our Father who art in heaven, that whole thing. And it's like, that's not supposed to be a template prayer. It's supposed to be a method, like what Jesus was saying was like, when you come to the Father, the first thing out of your mouth, the first thing out of your mind has to be your soul's recognition that you are speaking to your Father. Your Father. Your Father, like you, and you have to put that in your mind that that's who you're addressing. And what does that entail? It means that you are a son. You are a son of God. Behold, what manner of love that the Father has for us, that we should be called the sons and daughters of God. And you need to put your crown on when you address your Father. You need to put your crown on, young prince. You need to put your crown on, young princess, when you speak to your Father, because you are of his line. You are of the Father. You have been adopted and engrafted into the vine. That is your Father, and that's who you're speaking to. You need to speak to him as a father, and you need to understand your sonship, right? And daughters. I'm just going to say sons, All you ladies that listen to, like, when I say sons, just, insert daughter. You need to put on your crown when you talk to your father and understand your position in that place. And meditate on the fact that it's like when you speak to God, our Father, it's like, well, what does that entitle you to? Right? What entitlements do my sons have? What entitlements does my wife have? As I am the priest and supplicant of this household, the husband of this household and father. What are the things that my sons are entitled to? Affection, sure. Protection and instruction, absolutely. Audience, right? There will never be a time in my son's life until the day that I die that they will ever have to beg for an audience with me. They will always be able to come to me because they're my sons. It's a no-brainer. It really doesn't even need to be expressed vocally. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. You have children, they're yours, and you are theirs, right? And as I'm sitting there, my wife is asleep and both of my boys are asleep, and I'm just looking at that sweet moment, and I'm just like, oh, Father in heaven, holy is your name. And your son is coming to you now. I'm thinking, like, wow, hold on one second. I told you guys I was sick. Hold on. Just sitting there thinking, like, wow, what an awesome responsibility. How completely inept, ill-equipped, what's the other word? What is it when you don't hire somebody because they're not, they don't have the skills or whatever? It's like, man, I have a huge responsibility, and I'm not, I don't know anything about being a father. My father left when I was 1.5. I've never, I don't know how to be a good father. And if I'm going to learn, it's only going to be by the grace and mercy of the Almighty, and I have to cry out to Him and say, Father, I require this of you. I require this of you the way that the prodigal son required of his father, that his father give him his fortune before his father died. Remember the prodigal son, he says, Dad, give me my inheritance. Well, the way it works in Jewish culture is like, you don't get the inheritance until the dad dies, guy. Well, you know what I mean? Like, that's a weird, when you read the prodigal son, like, you have to stop and think, like, wait a minute, like, I thought you're supposed to get your inheritance when your dad dies. Yes. So it's very strange that this young man goes to his father and says, give me my money, right? He makes this demand and his dad gives it to him. Somehow, I guess it was his right to ask for it. Whatever. But like, that's the heart that I have to come to the Father with. It's like, Father, listen, I don't know what I'm doing, and I cannot afford to screw this up. The world cannot afford another fatherless son, another son who is emasculated because he had a bad father and learned bad things, or he had no father at all. The world can't bear that another one, not another one. I cannot drop the ball on this one, right? There's so many things that I failed at in life. So many heartbreaking things where it was like, man, if I just would have kept going, if I just wouldn't have given up, if I just would have, you know what I mean? Like, and when you're single, that's fine. It's fine. I mean, it's not great, but you're single, who cares? Whatever, nobody got hurt, except me. It's fine, but it's like, well, now I've got sons. And I have to go to my father and say, Father, you have to give this to me. You have to give this to me. You have to teach me to be a good father. Like, I can't be a bad father. Please, God, please give me this, give me whatever it is that your will is for these boys, and the fact that you've given me these boys. Like, you need to give that to me so that I don't fail. or fail badly. I mean, of course, when you're a parent, like you're gonna screw up and fly off of the handle, maybe raise your voice, whatever. Like I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like completely screwing up a human life, the way that some parents do. Tell their who knows. I mean, there's all kinds of examples, but I'm sitting there in my room and I'm praying that. I'm praying, Father, please, holy is your name. Let your kingdom come in my life. Let me live in the kingdom as I raise these boys, and let your will be done in my life as it applies to these boys. I can't screw this. Not this one, not this task, not this job. Give us this day the words that proceed out of your mouth, that daily bread. Let me hear your voice today. Not over time, not in memoriam, but today. I need to hear your voice and know what your will is today for these boys, for me and for my wife. And, round and round it goes. Circle of life, And deliver me from evil and guide me away from temptation. You know why Jesus said that? Because he was tempted. That's what Jesus was saying. Is like, man, I've been tempted and it sucks. When you pray to your Father, say, Lord, there's all kinds of temptations in life. If you could lead me out of their way, lead me out of those ways of temptation. But deliver me from evil. That whole thing. And then the for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Forever. Thine is the power forever. Yours. It's his power. And as I was getting ready to, do this show, like I was thinking about all these different things, because I've been watching some of what's been going on in the world, like Guy Vorst, whatever, that the former prime minister of Brussels, who, man, if you want to see the face of Satan, you go watch what that guy had to say the other day. He's talking about we need more power. The reason that the EU is collapsing is because these other nations won't give over their sovereignty to us. You need to give your sovereignty to us, more power. And that's the thing about the days that we're living in, right? Like these are wonderful times to be in. There's a lot going on. The world is we've made great strides to elevate people out of poverty. The crime rate in the United States is like at all-time lows. Like it's a wonderful time to be alive. And also at the same time, the powers of the dark kingdom are none too happy about it. And so we're seeing all of this backlash. We're seeing people walking around not knowing the significance of their own birth, the significance of their own gender. Like, you were made a man, you were made a woman. It is significant. It is all, it's the image of God. You were made in the image of God, whoever you are. And there's a lot of people who've had that taken away from them. What a horrible tragedy that is. That they were made in the very image of God. Those people that you see, those men who are walking around wearing a dress, putting on wigs and putting makeup on their face, saying, I'm a woman, I've always been a woman, I'm going to chop off my own dick. Like, those people, it's like, no, you were made in the image of God. You are a living representation of God's will and intention for all of us. And that has been taken from you. And it's very unlikely that they'll ever get it back. That's a tragedy. The powers of the dark kingdom are at work, and we see this guy. His name is actually Guy Vorst. I didn't pull it up. I'm sorry. But he's up there saying, "I want power. Give over your sovereignty to me." He said it out loud. He said it in front of the whole world. Give me your power. I was thinking about that because that's what Lucifer did, right? Remember the story? How Lucifer got expelled from heaven? Lucifer was the morning star. He was in charge of the music, right? He was the highest ranking person in heaven next to the Trinity, right? And what was his crime? Why did he get expelled? Because he wanted to be like God. But what does that mean? What does that really mean? Like how, like if you were to see that played out in action, what would that look like? What do you mean he wanted to be God? He wanted to usurp the authority and dethrone the Almighty and sit in that throne. What does that mean? It means he wanted the power. Not just the power. He wanted somebody else's power. Right? This is the thing about people. Is that we don't want to be happy. We want to have other people's happiness. Right? We don't want to be rich. We want to have other people's riches. We don't want to be powerful. We want other people's power. Right? It's always that discontent of looking at your brother, looking at other people and saying, I want what they have. And the addiction to power, it works that way, right? Because it stems from like people who seek money, like they realize pretty quickly that there's never going to be enough money. They can have all the money in the world and it still won't be enough. What they truly want is power. And once they get on that quest, it's the hedonic treadmill, man. It just keeps going. I just need more power. I just need more power. And I can't have power unless I have your power. Right? That's Satan. That's when Lucifer got his name changed. He went from Lucifer to Satan. How did that happen? Because he wanted power outside of the power that he already had. He was the chief. He had all the power, but it wasn't enough. He wasn't content. Right? When you see these people, when you see Guy Verhofstadt, whatever is, former Prime Minister of Brussels, if you want to Google it, when you see him up there saying, "Give us your sovereignty," the reason why everything is failing is because these nations won't give over their power to us. You need to give me your power. That's Satan. That's Satan. That's what wanting to be God means. It means I want your power. Meanwhile, God is over here saying, I have given you all things pertaining to life and godliness. And I was thinking about that as I was holding my little boy, my little infant son, who's just, about the size of two hands. If you put your two hands together, that's about how big he is. It's brand new. Saturday night, 10:20 at night. God says to him, I've given you all things that pertain to life. What does that mean? Well, when you come out of the womb, you already know how to breathe. That's pretty remarkable. Your little brain, your little cerebral cortex, like it already knows how to run all the functions. Keep the heart beating, keep the intestines, cycling food in and out, right? You get those funny little baby poops at first, right? God says, I've given you all things pertaining to life. When you come into this earth, you know how to breathe, you know how to maintain your heartbeat, you know how to nurse. You already know the mechanics of how to get milk out of that booby. You already know. God says, I've given you all things pertaining to life. Pertaining to life. Like you know how to eat. And as you get older, like you learn, that you need to eat your vegetables and eat your fruit, eat your meat. Right? You start learning the rhythms, like when you get hungry for certain types of foods, that's letting you know, like, hey, you need more iron, or you need more potassium, or whatever, you know what I mean? That's God. That's God. That's God telling you, hey, like, why do I crave a banana so bad right now? It's because you need potassium. Because I've given you all things pertaining to life. It's all coded. It's right in your blood. It's all coded. I've given you all things pertaining to life. You've never had to struggle to maintain your life. You know, I put this little alarm bell right in your blood that reminds you every 3 to 5 or whatever hours, like, you have to eat. I put this little alarm system right in your blood that tells you once you've been awake for 16 hours, it's time to go to sleep. And you have to sleep for 8 hours. Or what, whatever your own personal little spin on that is. But you know what I'm saying? That's God. You need to sleep, and your body reminds you. And if you don't fall asleep, like, your body will shut down. It'll force you to sleep. I've given you all things pertaining to life. As I'm holding my little boy, hearing those words of the Father saying, I've given you all things pertaining to life and godliness. That's the other thing that's coded into your blood. You have to believe it. You have to believe that God is your Father, and that it's coded right into your blood. This magnificent, personal, intimate father-son, father-daughter relationship is what is promised to you. And then if you cannot hear God speaking, then it can only mean one of two things. It can either mean that God doesn't talk to you, or it could mean that you're not listening, that you don't know how to listen. It's like there was a scene in that Kevin Costner movie where he was the bad guy and they kidnapped that kid, whatever. Remember that Clint Eastwood was in that movie and he got him at the end? But there's that scene where, they went to these people's houses and, like, took them hostage. And the father of that household, his son was acting up, so he slapped him, open hand slapped him on the ear. And then Kevin Costner, like, pulled out his gun and threatened to kill him. And he was explaining to him, he's like, look, your son can't hear you because sometimes little kids, they get so excited and all the blood rushes to their heads and it gets in their ears. It gives a blood rush to their little eardrums, and their eardrums start beating. And they can't hear anything because they're excited. Is it possible that you can't hear God because you don't know how to listen? So it's okay, it's all right. Because you can call out to him. You can have faith and believe, like, I know that I have all things pertaining to life. And because I know that, I can have faith that the other part of that scripture is true, that I have all things pertaining to a life lived in communication with God. You have to believe it. And if you don't believe it, that's fine too. One of the most profound passages of the Gospels. Now remember, the Gospels, written by 4 different people, telling basically the same story, just from different points of view. Those men walked with Jesus Christ for 3 years, and they all said, like, Jesus talked nonstop. He talked all the time. And here's what we have been able to distill, to write it down, and trust me, everybody who reads this book, we're not even scratching the surface. John talks, the Gospel of John, read the last few sentences. He says that, he says, look, I'm sorry, hey, dear reader, I'm sorry, but there's no way I'm going to be able to write all this stuff down. Right? But what we do have, you have to look at as being precious, because it's like, well, these guys, they thought it was important to tell this story. And the guy comes to Jesus and he says, hey, I need you to heal my kid. Because if you don't heal my kid is going to die. Please heal my kid. And Jesus says, hey, I'm happy to heal your kid, but it's the way it works is like it's your faith. It's your faith that does it, right? It's God working through your faith. So do you believe me? Do you believe is what Jesus says to him. And the guy says, yes, of course I believe. Help me in my disbelief. It's a weird passage of scripture, man. It's a barn burner if you really look at it. Hold on one second. This guy's standing there. It's 2,000 years ago. There's no x-ray machines. There's no vaccinations. There's no knowledge of germs. There's no, there's no running water. I mean, like plumbing. You know what I mean? Like it's 2,000 years ago. But they're just people. They're people just like you and me. They just lived in a very different time. This guy's standing there in front of this Jewish mystic who may or may not be the promised Messiah. Keep in mind, it's 2,000 years ago. So, like those people, they were like, well, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. And here's this man who just goes to work every day and does his thing. He raises his kids. And his baby's dying. He's got a little kid. He's dying. He doesn't, there's no Bernie Sanders health care. There's no Obamacare. You know what I mean? Like there's just either God's going to save this kid or the kid's going to die. And he's a father, like he's really broken up about it. So he hears about this guy Jesus. Guy from Nazareth is kind of a weird guy. Walked around with 12 knuckleheads and, lived outside mostly. A lot of people are saying he might be the Messiah. There's other people saying he's a heretic. Strange times. But he's like, man, I don't have time for any of that. I got a dying kid. So he goes to Jesus and says, Jesus, heal my son. And Jesus says, hey, do you believe me? He says, yes, I do believe you. Help me in my disbelief. That's the barn burner. Like Jesus, you're telling me that if my son's life is based on whether I believe or not, then my kid is a goner. Like I believe enough to have gotten me here to your feet. But now that you're telling me that my faith is life or death for my son, now I realize, now I see in my own heart, I can see it clearly, I don't believe. Help me in my disbelief. That's why that story got put into the book. Because that needs to be all of our prayer. All of us. Of course I believe. Father, help me in my disbelief, and be greedy for that. Be the prodigal son when it comes to that treasure, to go to the Father and say, I need this inheritance now. Help me in my disbelief. Give me belief. Give me faith. Because if you don't, man, people are going to die. Spiritually, metaphorically, even physically, whatever, there's going to be death if I don't live out my full belief, my full faith. Help me in my disbelief. It's such a beautiful prayer. You know what I mean? It's such a beautiful moment. Like if I could have a time machine, whatever, I would love to go back and just watch that guy. And watch that broken expression on his face when he realizes what Jesus is saying. He's like, look, Jesus is like, man, I'm happy to help. But I'm telling you, man, it's all God. It's all the Father that does it, and he does it through your faith, through your belief. So do you believe? And he says, yes, Lord. Help me in my disbelief. Yes, I believe. Yes, I believe. Help me in my disbelief. Let that be our prayer. Lord, help us in our disbelief. Because the winds have shifted, man. There's gnarly stuff on the horizon. The kingdom of God is stirring, and the kingdom of darkness, you can see them. You can see it. The kingdom of darkness is scrambling for power. because that's what they want. They're not content to know that God, you know what I mean? Like that's why I've said this even back when the show was about cryptocurrencies was like, look, the most dangerous person is somebody who seeks power. Because if you're seeking power, that by itself, that in of itself means that you don't know that you already have the power. You already have the power. You don't need to seek it. You don't need other people's power. You were made in the image of God. You have the crown on your head. You are of the royal line. And you've been adopted into the family. Like that's from a legal standpoint, like if when people are adopted, they cannot be disowned. That's the difference between natural birth and adoption. It's like, you know, theoretically, I can disown my own sons, but if you adopt somebody, you cannot disown them legally. And you've been adopted into the family of God. You cannot be disowned. And you were made in the image of this God. You have the power. And it's His. Right? You need to be aware of that and be, you know, grateful for that, because we're seeing, you know, that Lucifer, the old Satan, he's singing his favorite tunes of give me more power, give me your power. That's what was going on in the EU over the last few days with that guy. Give me your power. That's satanic. And it's happening right in front of you. These are epic times. Epic. Also, the Proud Boys were listed as a terrorist organization according to The Guardian. So I haven't done my homework on that. I'm afraid that's going to be it for the show today. Guys, I'm just like, I got a nose full of snot and coughing and running a bit of a fever. Just want to thank all you guys again for the well wishes and all the messages everybody sent me. It's really blessed me and my wife as well. Like, she reads them all too. Listen, you guys, support the things that you like. If you want to support this show, hit subscribe. All right, hit subscribe. Like, that's the big thing. If you want to send some dough, like, again, if you don't support the things that you like, they go away. Right? And like, I know it's getting close to Christmas. I don't want to put any pressure on anybody, but you know, the show costs me money. So if you guys want to help out, you can go on to archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com, and you can do PayPal, or there's the PayPal me /archadvocate there, I think, and Patreon, if you want. Again, thanks you guys. Sorry for all the sound effects of snots and whatnot, but that's it. I need to go lay down with my family, get a little bit more sleep, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.